The Trump administration does want to put National Guard onto the streets of Chicago, onto the streets of Oregon. They keep getting these judicial restraints, but the question now is whether or not they're going to even abide by these judicial restraints. The Trump administration wants to normalize military on the streets of America. By putting them there, they're going to incite more violence. That inciting violence will allow the president to declare an emergency, which will then keep the military on those streets, and we can see it in any city across the country.
Jamal, I'm trying to figure out now that National Guard deployment in DC is kind of receded a bit in the background. There's a whole different situation with DC not being fully a state and having some federal challenges of called home rule, that now it's really picking up steam for the Trump administration to go to places where even judges say that they are not allowed to go to. They are not allowed to send National Guard from California to Oregon, yet the Trump administration really, really wants to do that. What's going on? It's not like Portland's on fire.
The Trump administration does want to put National Guard onto the streets of Chicago, onto the streets of Oregon. They keep getting these judicial restraints, but the question now is whether or not they're going to even abide by these judicial restraints. It seems to me what we're up to is that the Trump administration wants to normalize military on the streets of America, and then by putting them there, they're going to incite more violence. That inciting violence will allow the president to declare an emergency, which will then keep the military on those streets, and we can see it in any city across the country.
But they're not just doing any city, right? They're particularly taking cities where Fox News and other outlets have built up this narrative that these cities are overrun by gangsters, they're overrun by illegals, they are on fire, there's lawlessness, right? People just can be shot. Most of the people who believe that, A, do not live in those cities, and B, probably aren't going to be visiting them. And so this is imposing this outside view onto people who live in these cities, have voting rights, and have made their choices of who they want to represent them. So this idea that these are magically blue states, I'm like, no, the people want these mayors. This is who they want as their governors. They are making their choices. So I don't, while I can see what is happening, I'm still having a hard time understanding why so many other Americans are going along with the idea and like the idea of sending National Guard and militarizing the streets in other cities. A, they don't live there. B, they're not the ones who have to deal with it.
Well, that's right. I think they're using the blue cities because they want to establish the precedent. If you put troops on the streets of Chicago and you animate people to fight them on the streets of Chicago, then that allows the president to declare these emergencies. And then you can put troops there whenever you want, because he can invoke the Insurrection Act. And here's what we know about the Insurrection Act. Started in 1807. Why? Because we all know the whole story of Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton from the movie or from the play Hamilton. But what happened after Aaron Burr shot Alexander Hamilton is that he tried to incite an insurrection by going to Louisiana and trying to create an empire of his own in Louisiana. And he had a military general on board to do it. That general flipped and then told the president that he was going to do it. So Jefferson signed the Insurrection Act to basically quell this budding rebellion that Aaron Burr was trying to lead in Louisiana. That's how this started.
Like, that is totally the best third act imaginable, not the Hamilton ends and you're like, oh, look, his wife is actually the one who built the Washington Monument and created orphanages. I'm like, that's lovely, but like, that's what I want to know, is that Aaron Burr decided that he was just going to build his own empire. And
because after he shot Alexander Hamilton, he was under indictment in New Jersey and New York. So he had to go somewhere else. So he left to go out west and started this whole conspiracy. So the Burr conspiracy takes place between 1805 and 1807. And what happens is Aaron Burr gets tried before the Supreme Court. Justice Marshall does not convict him, but then he leaves and goes to Europe. So that's a whole different story. But the whole thing was Jefferson created the Insurrection Act in part to quell this Burr rebellion. And then also there was something called the Embargo Act. So people were they were taking a bunch of goods they were trying to trade with Canada, and they had a bootleg operation going on. So he wanted to stop that. So anyway, what happened in 1807, we saw this used again during the Civil War. We saw this used again during the Civil Rights Movement, the Insurrection Act. And we saw it in the 1943 Detroit riot. But it hasn't been used that often. The last time was in 1992 during the LA riots. But when it happens, it's like literally there are fires, there are people being killed. It's full on disarray happening inside of cities. That is not what's happening in Portland. You're talking about one city block that's just got a couple dozen protesters on it. That's what's happening in Portland. And in Chicago, it's even less.
And so the story takes hold, like you said, that, oh, there's insurrection, there's rebellion. But again, it requires all the people who believe the story to forget the fact that the people in these cities and in these states have elected representatives. They have the resources. Judge has also said, specifically in Oregon, that the threshold of violence is not beyond the capabilities of local law enforcement. So I still struggle with this idea of being so comfortable with wanting your vote and to vote your way and your own election. Like, you want Trump in power and you want to be able to vote for him. Great, you did, you got him into power. But now suddenly other people's choices about who they want to lead them need to be undermined by sending in military.
And you
Right.
know
So
what's interesting? These 400 troops that are coming from Texas, they were trying to go to Oregon. The judge that's stopping it is a Trump appointed judge. And no liberal will really be fond of this judge right now, right? She interviewed Monica Lewinsky. She was part of the Ken Starr investigation. So there's all kind of reasons why conservatives should be happy with this judge. She's Trump appointed, but she even is saying we have we don't have we have a national law. We don't have martial law, was her quote.
hmm well, it's let's see. I mean, let's see where we go, because this is not the only city where Trump is trying this. They will continue, as you said, until either they meet some kind of organized people resistance, because I'm not convinced that the judicial resistance is going to be enough to change the scenario.
Well, there is a Biden-appointed judge in who's looking at the Illinois case. The question is whether or not she can stop the troops. She will stop the troops that are coming from Texas. I think it's a couple of hundred troops coming from Texas. Can she stop them before they actually get on the ground and on the streets in Chicago? That's what we're all waiting to see.